Do you have two priorities that you would tackle immediately on if elected?
Absolutely. They're obviously related to housing, issues related to housing, and also planning reform. Now, this morning it was ironic to see RTE publishing the Housing Commission calls for a radical policy reset. And this was commissioned by the Minister himself of Housing. And his own commission is actually saying that there's a deficit of 256,000 homes, that we have one of the poorest outcomes in Europe, and that we need to be building 23,500 houses per annum. Now, it's a bit late in the day. We've had the same government in place under Fine Gael for at least 12 years, propped up by Fianna Fáil. It was very well to say that housing is a priority and we'll get housing done, but you've had 12 years and more, actually much longer, to get housing done. And there's been nothing said about how you actually want to do it. So under the Sinn Féin new housing policy, for example, this idea of affordable homes, how are you actually going to achieve it? What's an affordable home for a starter home? Somewhere between 250,000, 268,000. And how do you actually manage that? You separate some of the costs, because the building costs in this country are quite different to the land costs and the registration and the VAT and everything else that's associated with actually the land acquisition. Now, under Eoin Ó Broin's new housing policy, he's actually saying, well, the state is going to take over some of those lands. They're going to be kind of in perpetuity leased, so that how can you make housing actually affordable? You're looking at the actual building cost to keep that down, and that the state is actually funding the land purchase, because an awful lot of the escalation of building in this country is the rezoning of land and the speculation on particular sites. That's where it's happening. So I think you can say until the cows come home, literally, what you're going to do, but nothing has been done here yet, and we're facing the biggest housing crisis, the worst in Europe. That brings me to planning reform. Now, I suppose looking at that whole issue of, I know myself as an impacted homeowner that has to demolish my home, I've been given a demolition, and there are hundreds if not thousands of homes, not just with defective concrete blocks, but building defects, legacy building defects. And even speaking to colleagues and people in the arts who have been fortunate enough to get onto the Leader scheme or have a studio or have a small business, it's the planning that is choking them up. It's that planning reform that's needed. We need it centralised. And that is, I suppose, another part of the Sinn Féin policy is to put in at least 10 million into recruitment of 500 additional staff over a 2-year period. So extra resourcing for on board Planola as well. And very importantly, commitment to informed participation and communication with stakeholder planning, the communities in the planning process. I know it's not in our county, but I was reading the story of that gentleman. He was in his 60s, and on his own land in Tipperary, he was putting in a small modular home to live in. He took his own initiative to actually clad it so that the water wasn't freezing in it for the winter, and he was running into problems putting even a mobile home in the middle of a housing crisis on his own land. Now, I think that's disgraceful. I think we need to look at it. It can't just be county by county. There has to be a whole restructuring of the planning system, and it has to be transparent for our communities, so that you're actually facilitating people, and that includes the enterprise and having access to be able to have a business on site or to improve your business as well. They're getting choked at planning stage. So those two priorities.
Thank you, Martina. And finally, Pat.